In 1996 and 1997, the Southeast was rocked by a series of bombings, with one taking place during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia, and the others targeting abortion clinics in Alabama and Georgia, along with a gay nightclub. The intensity of these bombs began escalating in nature, appearing to target law enforcement as they responded to the scenes. After law enforcement and the media incorrectly named an innocent man as a suspect in the Centennial Park bombing in Atlanta, a new suspect emerged, and this one seemed ready to evade capture and fight back if necessary. He spent more than 5 years on the run, hiding out in the secluded mountains of North Carolina, before finally being caught. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the two states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day. But all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas.
They are the families of the missing in America, and they're desperately searching for answers.
Somebody knows something.
I'm Josh Bankovitz. Join me for Season 3 of Missing in America. Listen carefully, because just one small detail might allow you to solve a mystery.
We have seen miracles happen.
Dateline, Missing in America. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 107, Eric Rudolph, The Escape, Part 1. On July 27, 1996, a bomb exploded in Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta during the Summer Olympic Games. Alice Hawthorne, a 44-year-old businesswoman and resident of Albany, Georgia, had decided at the last minute to take her 14-year-old daughter Fallon to the celebration. She loved Atlanta and often traveled there to shop and attend events. Hawthorne died as a result of injuries from multiple penetrating metal fragments from the bomb. Her daughter Fallon survived, but sustained deep cuts to her arms and legs from the shrapnel. The same night of the bombing, more than 111 spectators were injured, and a Turkish cameraman rushing to film the scene died from a heart attack. On January 16, 1997, at 9:30 a.m., a bomb exploded at an abortion clinic in Sandy Springs, Georgia. The blast was triggered by a device that had been placed either inside the Atlanta Northside Family Planning Services or on a windowsill. The clinic was on the first floor of a 3-story professional building and had just opened. 45 minutes later, a second bomb that was located inside or next to a trash bin in the building's parking lot went off. No one was hurt by the first explosion, but the second one injured 7 members of law enforcement and firefighters who were on the scene collecting evidence. On February 21, 1997, a bomb exploded at the Other Side Lounge, a gay nightclub in northeast Atlanta, injuring 4 people. Investigators were able to find a second bomb on the premises before it detonated. The Atlanta metro area and suburbs were put on high alert after these incidents. On January 29, 1998, a bomb hidden underneath a potted plant at the New Woman All-Women Clinic in Birmingham, Alabama exploded, killing 35-year-old off-duty police officer Robert Sanderson and seriously injuring 41-year-old nurse Emily Lyons. In a strange twist, a 19-year-old student at the University of Alabama at Birmingham was later interviewed for an article about the clinic bombing and revealed she had also been in Atlanta during the Centennial Park bombing. Christina Wilson said she was getting ready for class when she heard a noise outside that almost sounded like a dumpster being emptied. Then she thought about how it also sounded like the explosion at Centennial Park 2 years earlier. She had been there with friends during that bombing, although she hadn't been close to the blast. She brushed off the thought and headed for class, later noticing police officers outside roping off the area outside the clinic and hearing the sound of sirens approaching. The first suspect identified in the Centennial Park bombing was the security guard who first noticed the backpack housing the bomb, Richard Jewell. The 33-year-old was working a 12-hour shift patrolling the grounds of the park on the night of the bombing when he noticed a group of intoxicated visitors littering near a sound and light tower near the music stage. He walked off to report the incident, but on the way, he noticed an olive green military-style backpack underneath the bench. At first, he didn't think it was suspicious and thought it belonged to the group of drunk troublemakers. He mentioned it to a nearby agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Tom Davis. Davis asked the group if they knew who owned the backpack, and they said they didn't. That's when he and Jewel decided to clear spectators away from the area and warn the technicians in the Sound and Light Tower. The bomb exploded at 1:25 a.m., and when federal agents later arrived on the scene, Richard Jewell was one of the first people they interviewed. What Jewell didn't know was that an anonymous caller had phoned 911 twice to warn them about the bomb being in the park. Due to confusion with logistics, the dispatchers were not able to alert the proper response team to the park until the bomb had already gone off. At first, the press heard Jewell's story and hailed him as a hero for noticing the backpack and quickly taking action. But 3 days later, a reporter named Kathy Scruggs from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution heard from a friend connected to the Federal Bureau that the agency was taking a close look at Jewell as a suspect in the bombing. She confirmed this tip with another source who worked for the Atlanta police. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution then published an article in mid-July with the headline, "FBI suspects Hero Guard may have planted bomb." In another article that ran on July 30th, 1996, Kathy Scruggs and Ron Martz wrote that investigators now say Jewell fits the profile of a lone bomber, and they believe he placed the 911 call. This profile generally includes a frustrated white man who is a former police officer, member of the military or police wannabe who seeks to become a hero. Jewell was interviewed extensively. His home was searched. He and his family were hounded by the media. Employers from Jewell's past came forward with their experiences working with him. He had spent a year working as a jailer in Georgia, and in 1991 was promoted to a deputy. He attended the Northeast Georgia Police Academy. He was driven to be a police officer, but he struggled with balancing authority. After wrecking his patrol car in Habersham County and being demoted back to a jailer, he left his position with the sheriff's office. He was arrested on charges of impersonating a police officer when he tried to arrest someone in DeKalb County. He then took a police job at Piedmont College. There, he again overstepped the boundaries of his position, which was meant to be more of a public safety job. Students complained of his behavior, which led to school administrators forcing him to resign. In 1996, when he saw the notice that the Summer Olympics was looking to hire security, he decided to apply for a position there. This history helped add to the media narrative that Richard Jewell was an overzealous wannabe police officer who wanted to play the part of a hero so much that he put people's lives in danger for it. It didn't take long for the FBI to conclude that they were wrong about Richard Jewell. They knew, based on his location in the park, that he couldn't have been the one to make the phone call to 911 warning about the bomb from the payphone in the neighborhood. They didn't find any evidence that he had purchased the items needed to make an explosive device, or that he had any knowledge on how to even do so. But the damage to Jewell's reputation had been done. U.S. Attorney Kent Alexander issued the following statement in late October of 1996. Today I have delivered a letter to counsel for Richard Jewell advising him that based on the evidence developed to date, Mr. Jewell is not a target of the Centennial Olympic Park bombing investigation. Due to the extensive coverage of Mr. Jewell, and in fairness to him, I am also issuing this public statement. A target is a person whom the government can link to a crime with substantial evidence, and in the judgment of the prosecutor is a likely defendant. In close consultation with the FBI and after a careful review of the evidence, including Mr. Jewell's recent interview with the FBI, I have determined that Mr. Jewell is not a target at this time. Barring any newly discovered evidence, the status will not change. The FBI is thoroughly and vigorously investigating the brutal Centennial Olympic Park bombing that left 2 people dead and over 100 wounded. The public expects nothing less. Unfortunately, criminal investigations often intrude upon the lives of private citizens like Mr. Jewell and his mother. In this case, the Jewells have regrettably endured highly unusual and intense publicity that was neither designed nor desired by the FBI, and in fact, interfered with the investigation. The public should bear in mind that Richard Jewell has at no time been charged with any crime in connection with the bombing. and the property that was seized pursuant to court-authorized search warrants has been returned. The FBI and its partner law enforcement agencies are working tirelessly to bring to justice the persons responsible for the Centennial Olympic Park bombing. I hope that the investigation can now move forward with no further premature publicity about the identity of individuals who have been and continue to be investigated in this case. Richard Jewell later said, "You don't get back what you were originally. I don't think I will ever get that back. The first 3 days, I was supposedly their hero, the person who saves lives. They don't refer to me that way anymore. Now I am the Olympic Park bombing suspect. That's the guy they thought did it." Jewell later testified at congressional hearings over the FBI's mishandling of the case. The public learned 2 FBI agents had initially interrogated Jewell under false pretenses. They brought him to the agency under false pretenses and said they needed help making a training video for first responders. Jewell eventually sued several different news outlets for libel and won settlements from Piedmont College, the New York Post, CNN, and NBC, but lost his battle against the parent company of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. NBC agreed to pay $500,000 to Richard Jewell, but the amounts of the other settlements have never been disclosed. Jewell died on August 27, 2007, from heart disease and complications from diabetes. He was 44 years old. In 2019, Clint Eastwood directed a movie titled Richard Jewell, a story about how rushing to judgment can ruin the life of an innocent person. On January 30, 1998, authorities began looking for a 31-year-old man named Eric Rudolph after witnesses spotted his 1989 gray Nissan pickup truck near the scene before and after the blast at the New Woman All-Women Clinic. One of the tipsters also noticed that a man wearing a blonde wig had gotten into the truck. Before he could be questioned, 2 raccoon hunters found Rudolph's truck abandoned in the woods about 8 miles outside of Murphy, North Carolina on February 7, 1998. Law enforcement conducted an extensive door-to-door search of nearby residents and the woods, but turned up no leads. News outlets began digging into the backstory of the quiet loner from North Carolina named Eric Rudolph, especially when a federal warrant was issued on February 14, 1998, officially charging him with the bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. Eric Rudolph was raised in Homestead, Florida, but moved to Western North Carolina in 1981 with his mother and 3 siblings after the death of his father, an airline pilot. They bought property in the Nantahala community of northwestern Macon County. Neighbors reported that his mother and the children homesteaded, trying to live as self-sufficiently and independently as possible. Rudolph enrolled at the nearby K-12 Nantahala school, but dropped out after the 9th grade. While there, he wrote a paper arguing that the Holocaust had never happened. He also left civics class one day, arguing with his teacher that he didn't want to learn about the government. His mother refused to give school administrators his Social Security number. Classmates said he always preferred spending time outdoors and would go for days camping in the woods before returning home. It appears he spent the next several years after dropping out of high school earning money doing local carpentry work. One acquaintance said he was a good-looking young man with dark hair and blue eyes who always wore Army fatigues. He got his GED and attended college at Western Carolina University for 2 semesters before withdrawing and joining the U.S. Army. He completed basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, but was discharged in 1989 at the lowest pay grade. He then returned to Nantahala, where he took up carpentry work again. Friends told reporters for the Asheville Citizen-Times that he worked in both North Carolina and Tennessee and was a talented craftsman, but no official employment records for him ever existed, meaning he must have preferred working off the books. Rudolph's mother, Patricia, was a talented oil painter who had served several years as the president of the Jackson County Visual Arts Association. She later moved back to Florida, leaving the family home to Rudolph and one of his older brothers. The brother transferred the land to Rudolph, and he sold it for $65,000 2 months before the Centennial Park bombing. Friends of the family also said that in 1996, after he sold that property in Macon County, he began using the alias Bob Rudolph and distancing himself from family and friends. He moved around until landing in a rented mobile home in Cherokee County. He preferred to make rent payments in cash because he said he didn't trust banks. Before we continue, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors.
Do you love true crime and travel? Having traveled the world solo the last couple of years and being obsessed with true crime, I found myself researching others who took the same vacations but never made it home. The Last Trip is a true crime podcast covering missing and murdered people that were living their best lives on vacation. I'm your host, Jamie Beebe, and each week I'll bring you on The Last Trip, taking a deep dive into vacation culture and travel spots, tips on staying alive while traveling, and ultimately recreating someone's last days in paradise. What led to their last trip? What are the hard facts? What is the final outcome? And could you be next? David Sneddon was a 24-year-old college student from Utah attending Mandarin classes in Beijing when he mysteriously disappeared while hiking Tiger Leaping Gorge. Chinese authorities said he drowned in the gorge, and U.S. authorities agreed, although his body was never found and his parents didn't believe that. 7 years later, out of the blue, they got a phone call from a former U.S. official who had evidence David is still alive. This case sounds like a Hollywood movie, but evidence doesn't lie. So where is David Sneddon? Famous rugby player and Celebrity X Factor contestant Levi Davis went missing in Barcelona last year while on a backpacking trip through Europe. Just days before he vanished, he posted a 15-minute video to his Instagram account saying his life was in danger and people were after him. After he disappeared, several theories emerged. But what really happened to Levi Davis? Join me, Jamie Beebe, co-host of the popular true crime series Strictly Stalking, as I embark on a brand new adventure combining true crime and travel. Listen to The Last Trip wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you looking to level up your writing or learn a new skill? Whether you focus on nonfiction or are more inclined to creative writing, or want to learn how to put together a digital portfolio of your writing, Wow Women on Writing can help. Interested in podcasting? Check out a digital course I created called You Can Start a Podcast. During this pre-recorded webinar, you will learn the benefits of creating your own podcast, materials you need to get started, how to develop content that will keep listeners coming back for more, and ways your podcast can create supplemental income. I'll share examples of different types of podcasts, how to decide on a format, ways to handle the technology necessary for creating a podcast, how to develop your first few episodes, promotion and monetization ideas, and ways you can repurpose your podcast content. I'll provide all the written materials and resources you need, along with a handout with information discussed in the webinar. I'll also give you suggestions for a few different types of podcasts to explore to get started. Best of all, this webinar only costs $30. You can find it by going to wow-womenonwriting.com and clicking on the Classroom tab. I'll post a link in the show notes. Here's your friendly PSA that if you haven't been using the skincare products from SkinxErin, you might be doing it wrong. But it's never too late to do the right thing. Here are a few ways you can make the most out of the skincare products from SkinxErin. In addition to cleansing your face, the pre-cleanse oil also makes an excellent shaving balm, reducing irritation and protecting your skin. In addition to moisturizing your face, the hydrating beauty oil is a savior for scorched summertime hair. Just massage a few drops onto your fingertips and work into those dry ends to quickly replenish your locks. And if you happen to linger too long in the sun without reapplying sunscreen, hey, it happens, use the Perfecting Night Oil, which will dramatically increase healing from a burn with its high levels of antioxidants. Go ahead and treat yourself with 10% off your order using my code MissingCarolinas10. I'll include a link in the show notes for you. In February 1998, Rudolph's family said through their attorney that they were shocked he was considered a suspect in the Birmingham bombing. In early March, his brother Daniel cut off his hand with a circular saw, videotaping the incident as a protest to the FBI and media handling of the case. The hand was later reattached. In March 1998, federal agents formed the Southeast Bombing Task Force, merging the investigations of the Birmingham bombing and the 3 Atlanta bombings. They now believed Rudolph was tied to all of the cases. One ammunition dealer in Birmingham told media that anybody with skills to repair their lawnmower or toaster could make one. The question is why the heck you'd want to. The Centennial Park bomb was constructed from a pipe with nails, screws, and black powder. The ones at the Northside Family Planning Services Clinic in Georgia and the Other Side Lounge used secondary bombs designed to do more damage than the first. The Birmingham bomb used powder and nails hidden in a potted plant, but the bomber had triggered it by a remote control rather than a timer. The task force began connecting the pieces of evidence together, and they all pointed to Eric Rudolph. According to an article in the December 14, 1998 edition of the Charlotte Observer, they found traces of nitroglycerin and fibers from a blonde wig inside his truck. A man wearing a blonde wig had been seen leaving the scene of the Birmingham clinic bombing. Investigators matched flooring nails from the Atlanta and Birmingham bombings to ones they found in a storage shed he had rented. Small steel plates built into the Centennial Park and Atlanta clinic bombs came from a North Carolina machine shop. They found an ammo dealer in Nashville, Tennessee, who sold bullets and smokeless powder to a man matching Rudolph's description. He was using the name Bob Rudolph. On May 5, 1998, Eric Rudolph was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, and a $1 million reward was offered for information leading to his arrest. Federal investigators held a press conference where they said they believed Rudolph was hiding out in the western North Carolina mountains and could have used the Appalachian Trail as an escape route. They knew that he had the skills necessary to live off the land for an undetermined amount of time. Their hunch was right. On July 7, 1998, Rudolph apparently came out of hiding long enough to approach a health food store owner in Andrews, North Carolina. The two had been acquaintances for several years. According to George Nordman, Rudolph declared he was innocent and wanted to buy food and some other supplies. Nordman said he had a beard and a long ponytail, was dressed in camouflage, and had lost a considerable amount of weight. He joked about looking like a hippie and said he was starving to death, living on the run, eating mostly green beans and oatmeal. Nordman thought about helping him at first, but then declined. Rudolph left, and Nordman left his home to spend the night at his business, the Better Way health food store, because he was worried about Rudolph coming back. When Nordman returned home, he discovered 50 to 75 pounds of food missing, including canned green beans, beets, corn, tuna fish, raisins, and a large bag of wheat bran. 5 $100 bills had been left behind at the home, presumably for payment. Also missing was Nordman's 1977 Nissan pickup truck. That was later found at the Bob Allison campground near the Cherokee and Macon County line with a handwritten note from Rudolph inside. Another manhunt ensued, including the use of tracking dogs, narrowing the search to 30 square miles, but the trail still went cold. The July 13th edition of the Asheville Citizen-Times featured a list of Eric Rudolph sightings that had been reported through the tip lines. Someone thought they saw him in Montgomery, Alabama. Others said they had seen him at a hair salon in the town of Franklin and eating a cheeseburger at a deli in Cashiers. In late 1998, the Charlotte Observer reported that someone claiming to be Eric Rudolph was sending letters to media outlets across the South. The author of the letter offered to surrender if the $1 million reward for his capture would be used to hire Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, and F. Lee Bailey as his defense team. In early January 1999, a former FBI agent and assistant professor of criminal justice at Western Carolina University told the Asheville Citizen-Times, "The more time that expires, the less likely you are to find the person. As long as the person doesn't commit another crime, they could stay gone for a considerable amount of time." One of the lead inspectors on the case said, "We feel that he is still here. There is no evidence that he has left, and as we told you before, he has to have food, and he may have to make a significant move to get it." On March 13, 1999, a bomb went off outside the FemCare clinic in Asheville around 7:15 a.m. No one was hurt during the blast because it happened before the clinic opened. At the time, investigators said they didn't believe the Asheville bomb was similar in nature to the Alabama and Georgia bombs constructed by Eric Rudolph. Then, nothing. Eric Rudolph presumably stayed hidden from sight, likely continuing to use his survivalist tactics to evade capture, until the early morning hours of May 31st, 2003, when a 21-year-old rookie police officer spotted a suspicious man behind the Save-A-Lot food store in Murphy, North Carolina. Thinking he had detained a burglar, the police officer had no idea at first that the man was Eric Rudolph, now 36 years old, but he would soon learn. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. Please join me next week for part 2 of the Eric Rudolph story, where I'll discuss more about his capture, his time on the run, and the conclusion of this case. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people profiled on the show. Like what you hear? You can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com, Renee Robertson. Do you know of a missing persons case in North or South Carolina that you think should be covered? Email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Wow Women on Writing, and the great programs and writing contests they have to support writers at wow-womenonwriting.com. Treat yourself to a skincare kit from SkinxErin with my code MissingCarolinas10. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. Sound editing is provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.